Freedom's child, you have been denied too long. Fill your lungs and cry rage. Step forward and take your rightful place. You're not going to grow up.
Thanks, guys.
Knocking at the back door.
Good morning.
For you,
Good afternoon.
there'll be no traveling.
Welcome. That was a song called Freedom's Child. Of course, my collaboration with South African poet laureate, dissident poet and anti-apartheid activist, Dr. James Matthews, and myself. I'm going to show you the book. This is Cry Rage. It's the big anthology. The fact that this anthology was actually banned in the early 70s in South Africa is just an indication on how powerful James's words were, and also how powerful art is. The poem that stood out for me was The Face of My Mother, and this poem is really it's painting a scene like in an opera or in a film, where the white police officers knocking on the door and bursting in, and here are the two parents and the small child, and the child is actually the one witnessing what's happening. And it's funny that 20 years before reading this poem, I experienced the exact same scene to a different extent on a warm, sunny day with my parents during the apartheid era. I was about 4 or 5, and we went to this beautiful beach, and we were just ready to sit down and have our little picnic sandwich. And suddenly, stopped this police van, telling my dad that we were disturbing the neighbors, and there was no one else on this beach. So who were we disturbing? We were disturbing people just by being who we were. So this is why for me this work was terribly important, not just as an artist but also as a South African.
That was just so beautiful. It was really, really touched my soul the way you put the poem to music, and so thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm here to talk a little bit about my great-grandparents, Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, who, as many know, were leaders during the Depression in the United States and the Second World War. And I wanted to start by speaking a little bit about my great-grandmother, Eleanor, because she was one of the drafters of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And she made sure that she always stood up against a lack of freedom. And I really loved what Melanie shared, because sometimes it's the things that touch your everyday life, and that you need to make sure that you're always the person who stands up and says no when you see something wrong. And so one of the things that Eleanor did was, there was a very famous opera singer at the time, Marian Anderson, and she was slated to perform at Constitution Hall. And the Daughters of the American Revolution said that because she was Black, they would not allow that. Eleanor wouldn't stand for that. She quit their group, and she arranged with her husband, the President Franklin Roosevelt, for her to perform instead at the Lincoln Memorial. So she took what could have been a small action, but was very important to show to others that intolerance is not acceptable. Franklin also took steps that were very important to ensure that everyone's freedom was protected and understood. Because of the Depression, there was an anti-immigrant movement going on, and he began a famous speech by sharing "My fellow immigrants." And this was a remarkable realization for some people, but everyone in the United States, except for the Native Americans, are immigrants. And in particular, he was an immigrant. His family was originally from the Netherlands. And so I think it's those little things that just bring people together, and they start the kind of erosion of a lack of freedom.
Most of you may have known about Uganda. Like many African countries, Uganda, where I was born, is being dominated by a history of civil war. And I spent most of my lifetime in conflict. I spent at least 21 years of my life in the camp. So as a child, I saw it all. I saw the worst part of humanity and the best part of humanity. And talking about war is not what I talk about because I studied or because I researched, but it's because I lived in and I survived and I became who I am. A lot of young people of my age, as young as 12, 11, 9 years, would be abducted and forced to kill their own parents. This kind of subjection, the humiliation, and the kind of torture that we grew up witnessing is what made me to choose that. As much as I've been through all I have been through, I'm sick and tired of life of war. I'm sick and tired of suffering. I want to be a new version of me. I want to live a better life, total opposite of life I'm living. I chose a different path. It's where I gained my discipline and my choices for peace. And when I was 13 years old, that's when I decided to say that I will never learn how to shoot a gun. And luckily to date, I don't know how to shoot a gun.
It's a great opportunity to meet everyone else here today. Some people see that freedom, if you don't have handcuffs, then you are free. No, the freedom that doesn't work like that. It works like mentally, psychologically. You could be locked in a sense of mind, in a sense of thought, where you see things that enchain you, that make yourself like reliable or vulnerable a little more. So in my stories, I've seen like pictures which hinder our children's purpose. We are in a life of uncertain sequences. We are in a life of difficult situations. So we must change in a different sense of thought, which will work in a positive way.
So I'm going to tell the story of my parents. It was 1980, and it was in Peru. So it was like a war, a political war, because they had terrorists. They were extreme communists. My mom was a teacher at the time. My dad was a military nurse. Well, my mom was sent to a rural school, and she was happy there. She fell in love with the little kids. She was very happy, and until the terrorists came and took her and the other teachers by prisoners. She was so scared. My dad was sent to the missions, and he had to see his friends die just right in front of him, and he had to go to a psychiatric hospital because he couldn't sleep. So that's what he said when I asked him when he didn't feel free in his life. He was like a prisoner of his mind.
Of course, the parents of Milagros lived in such a very anxious time, and I think Victor also lived through some very anxious moments in his life. How do you deal with that psychologically, like day to day? What are some of the coping mechanisms that come with that?
I always felt like my opinion didn't matter, and they always told me to say whatever I pleased. But when I'm with other people, I always felt nervous or anxious. I don't know why, but well, I'm nervous too right now. So I don't know. I have to learn about to be brave, to say whatever I want, to do whatever I want, because I don't.
I wanted to say something about what Milagro said. She said that her dad was a prisoner of her mind, and that just got me thinking about something. And freedom is something that has two aspects, I guess. There's the external one. It's the one you experience outside, the one where you walking in the streets and someone can call you names and do these kind of bad things to you. And there's also the internal one, and that's for me the biggest kind of freedom. It's the one in your head. It's your thoughts. It's the fear of judgment. It's when you're doubtful, and it's when you're fearful. I think that's bad, because we set our minds in traps, and we can't express ourselves freely. The only moments I personally feel free is when I'm alone. I just let go of everything and I meditate, and I feel like I'm the queen of my word, my own word, because at that time nothing controls me. Nothing. I'm just, not even my thoughts, not even my mind. I just free myself. And I'm just like a pure baby. It's just like I was born. And I think that's what we all should do. You know, the little things matters. For me, it's when I meditate or when I sing or when I'm happy. That's when I'm free. And I think everybody should give a lot of importance to little things, the things you love, because that's what makes you the most free you can ever be.
You know, these little things, these simple, you know, things that we think are so simple, that they're actually so important and cause this just immense shift within ourselves. And if we shift within ourselves, imagine what we're taking out into the world, you know, because we actually are the light of the world. You know, every person is the light of the world. So thank you for bringing that up, because it just really gave me some life and inspired me. Thank you.
Well, I do really agree with Kanza. I think that there's like your own, like your personal aspect to freedom, but also indeed a societal one that can feel or can make you feel restricted in your freedom. For example, when a boy wants to wear a skirt, he can feel like, I can do this, but if the whole society will say, no, you're not supposed to, then that is still a restriction in freedom. So
I'm suffering from racism sometimes, especially when I go abroad. I'm a Muslim. My mom is wearing hijab, and when we are in Europe, for example, we feel that most of people are fearing us. So I think that racism is in also for religions.
I think that we have a responsibility to protect other humans, to make sacrifices, to contribute to the global good. And so something that I'm focused on is what we can all do to help each other. So I'd love to hear more what other people have to say about either equality or inequality during this crisis that is, you know, certainly impacting not just the United States, but the whole world.
Definitely, Tracy, I think it really is about consciousness that we are sharing this planet together. It's about respect, actually. It's when you respect someone else, you really respect their life. I think with COVID now, we really see that it's really these small acts of kindness that really shift, you know, a society. And then I'd like to just speak about what Atabile was saying. Freedom is definitely something that starts in the mind. And in South Africa, or the whole of Africa even, it's not possible to look at the lockdown the same way, because people don't have the amenities that we have here in the States or in Europe. And of course, we're all equal in the lockdown, but you know, the quality of our life during the lockdown definitely varies within different places in the world. We're all human beings. We don't have any choice as to where we're born on the planet.
We have to go to the basics of humanity. It's all about human life. It's all about life. We're limited life. Not even fighter jets can shoot and kill corona. If one of us is suffering from this planet that we share, it can reach all of us. So the question is, should we let them suffer? The answer is no. We shouldn't let anybody suffer, because even if we have mansions and wealth like that, we are limited to life. It's an eye-opener that we have to know that we are together. If an African, an Asian, an American is suffering, regardless of the color, it can affect all of us. Right now, we're at the same level, and we have to agree to the fact that we can only survive if we don't allow suffering for one of us to continue willingly.
I had been listened to all your opinions and stories, and I am so thankful, and I had been reflecting of what means freedom for me and if I was free. And I'm so glad to came to the conclusion that we have so much things in common, but two, we have a different life. And something that Victor says, it makes sense to me. It was that we have to look the world like an us and not they.
Since freedom is all about stepping out of your comfort zone and stepping out of the house feeling safe and going to go buy something at the store, I just read a story just last night about a man who was killed by a white policeman and died. And I was like, that is his freedom that was being taken away. His freedom to be listened to, because he was not heard when the policeman was just on his neck. And he told the policeman, I cannot breathe, don't kill me. And that immediately was to the policeman like he was just nonchalant about the entire thing. He restricted that man of his freedom and the freedom to love his family. And I just wanted to know on your guys' perspective and what is your guys' view on that? What is this man's freedom? How was this man thinking that I'm living one day and the next I'm not?
That's a huge problem in the United States. That man's name was George Floyd. And it is something that is endemic in the United States at the moment. It's not just the police, it's even other citizens, and it's devastating what happened to him, and it continues to happen. And I think that when you talk about denial of freedom, that's certainly the ultimate freedom, the right to live someone's life and the right to do the normal things that we sometimes take for granted.
I feel like we have to look back at the history, not just of America, but the history of Black and white interaction. And so much of this is happening still because we have not dealt with the scars of slavery. Yeah, and not dealt with being the slave and also being the slave owner and slave master, and not dealing with the fact that those atrocities definitely exist in modern day society now. And if we're not willing to discuss that as a world and as America, if we're not willing to sit down and really put all our dirty laundry on the table, then I don't know how we're going to heal these scars. You have to be able to walk in life in the skin you're in.
Racist people makes me sick. I don't understand why they are so selfish, why they are the way they are, why they feel they are the kings of the world, why they think they are dominant over other people. Makes me totally sick. And I think it can be fixed through education. If you start with the little kids and you teach them to be better persons when they grow up, I think it can make some change.
So I just wanted to express more about the freedom and the expression of how our history hinders our how to excel in freedom. We live in a different society. Like it's I will reflect on Tracy Roosevelt feeling on how we as people should try and degrade and see things in a different way.
If we look at history from an individual perspective, it's not going to gain us much in the long term. I think what we can do is try to look at it from a collective point of view that I think is much stronger. What did we as a society do that we might want to correct now? And in that way, you don't have to feel personally accountable for everything that happened, but you can take that little bit of personal responsibility for it.
Then the question that we are left wondering, do we teach our history with intent to heal the historical wounds, or we teach the history to open up a ground for revenge? I think if we seek answers to the global crisis or to some racial crisis, we need to teach history with intent to heal.
There's this lady from Nigeria, Adichie. She had a story called The Danger of a Single Story. And I feel like history comes from a single lens. It does not capture both lenses. So now we are given one certain story and not given the other.
The question that I kept asked all the time, how can you remain peaceful when you are being attacked? As human, you wouldn't want to be tortured, brutalized, attacked, and targeted and denied opportunity. But there's a moment in life that We can all be courageous, but there's a moment when wisdom tells you when to back off, when to change the strategy. I think I am not a revolutionist. I am not, but I want to evolve. I'm evolving. Why should I go and kill my fellow citizen in the name of that I'm a revolutionary? Because I want to become a president. I think people have abused, hijacked the concept of revolutionary, which was about freedom, which was about peace, about services and development for the citizen. But right now, revolutionary is about power, it's about money, it's about political manipulation and dominance. This is what I wanted to say. In terms of suffering, I saw it all, but it helped me become somebody. I got to appreciate life. And I feel that from the darkness, the clouds of injustice that we have been through, came the small light that sparked the beautiful, bright light colors of rainbow. And I feel like I may be that stone that can be that striking stone that can bring the beautiful rainbow light in the darkness of injustice and suffering and fears and death that we are seeing.
There's a run in my stocking, I don't care but show. I'm always gonna be a lover, so you haters should know. You can see it from the outside, though it's covered with skin. My soul's coat hanger without checking it in. Don't try to change me, 'cause you never made me. If you have any questions, go ask my mama, she knows. She gave me very strong bones. Strong bones. Will always be your home. Strong bones. Very strong bones. Strong bones. You'll never be alone. Strong bones. Very strong bones. Oh, 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 oh. She gave me very strong bones. She gave me very strong bones.